Are we on? Can you hear us? Is the mic on? The mic's on. Welcome back. Did anyone get a drink? Did you get those Lego bricks? They're good, aren't they? I was just explaining the concept of remuneration using Lego to David, who was very keen. David Keenan's my next guest. All the way from Glasgow, and we're going to begin with a reading from Monument Maker, aren't we? That's where we're going to go first. I mean, we could go anywhere, and we might, but we're going to start with Monument Maker. Do you want to read here, or are you going to?
I'll stand over there because it's set up. If that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this. So this is all a section from Monument Maker. We'll talk about it afterwards because I experienced this in real life as much as I wrote it. It is National Music Day in France. In the village of Namur, the castle is all stopped up with concrete in order that it can't hear a thing. In the village of Grès-sur-Loire, the houses are shuttered and silent. In the village of Baron-Marlotte, there is swaying in the streets. A band is set up in the road outside of the rock and roll bar with the pictures of Marilyn and B.B. King on the walls. There is a sweet, sticky smell of fried mussels in the air. A fat girl with an off-the-shoulder dress and a peeling sunburn is drinking from a hip flask as the band sound checks. The drummer wears one of those awful head mics and a t-shirt cut off at the sleeves. The bassist, 5 and 6 string bass, this is France, has a permanent fag in his mouth. The lead guitarist, a young man in a Hawaiian shirt, is inaudible. The rhythm guitarist and vocalist sings China Girl by David Bowie in a pained, soulful voice. The lead singer is a crusty young woman, painfully thin, in yoga pants, trainers, and a vaguely oriental dress. She has shaved the back of her head and wears her long hair over it in a bun. The usual crew are inside the bar drinking and refusing to come out. In the street, the families are gathering. A father and son sit at a table, the son muscular, ordinary, and with a tattoo on his bicep that is strained to read. What does it say on his arm? I asked my flower. My flower reads it from the corner of her eye. I am the hero of the story, she says. I don't need anyone to save me. He looks exactly like his father. Already the servers are looking stressed, although no one in the crowd seems to care about the speed with which they bring out the fried mussels. I need a clear passageway, the bald server despairs. I need a clear passageway. There must be at least 50 people here, sitting at long tables or standing leaning against the wall, like a contemptuous young man who shakes his head at the band's lame take on Pink Floyd. A little punk with a backwards baseball cap who flagrantly picks his nose. And now the fat village rocker has arrived with greasy permed hair and a black blazer and a huge beer gut and a grey t-shirt and a beautiful blonde wife and a straw fedora with a white bow on it. And he's telling someone about auditioning a new bass player. He's talking about getting back in the game. Where his 2 little kids run riot and topple from the benches and bang their heads on tables, and his beautiful blonde wife just stares into space. It's enough that she is his wife in this village. And the other waiter, who is dressed completely in white and who holds his tray high above his head so he can follow his speedy movements throughout the crowd, is boasting to a table of cute girls of his ability to speak 3 languages, none of which the girls can speak, and so are denied the full effect of his sophistication. And now the band are playing Bob Marley, and the rhythm guitarist and vocalist has switched into a Rasta hat for the occasion. Exodus. He is singing Movement of the People, and someone is filming the show. Down the front, an elderly man all dressed in black, is preserving it forever. How many times will I rewatch it? And my flower rolls her eyes and says, this band is really crap. And it's true. The drummer is particularly awful. The singer gets the words wrong and misphrases every line. The saxophonist, who has appeared on stage from out of nowhere, is clearly drunk. And yet everyone is singing along at this approximation of music, at this weird staging of fun. And a couple arrive at the table next to us. It has been reserved for them and their two angelic children. I say angelic because of the quality of their skin, which is pockmarked and swollen, and the quality of their eyes, which are wide and indiscriminating, pools of unreflecting light. And who stare in wonder at a green-coloured drink, at a plate full of fries, at a bouncing ball, at the light show projected onto a white transit van behind the band. And as the presence of angels inevitably makes us question ourselves, I wonder if I am less than the moment. If in my cynicism, I have mistaken ideas for reality. And I say to my flower, well, what do you want? A more professional presentation? And she laughs, and I realize that in ourselves alone, we are no match for the Creator. Because if it were down to us, we would have everything work out just as we wanted, which isn't how we wanted it at all. And how boring would that be anyway? And thank God for this constant duet between what is given and what could be. Thank God for upsets and for imperfections and for failings. Thank God for his tenderness too, I think. As I catch sight of the profile of the man next to us, the father of the saintly children, and I see they have inherited his skin. I see how they have grown from their father in angelic imperfection. Because at first I think he has tribal piercings all around the lobe of his ear, which seems completely out of character with his staid appearance, his neat hair, beady spectacles. But then I realise that his ear is rotting. His ear is rotting and coming off his head. The side of his head is eaten away with some kind of flesh-devouring infection, and his rotten ear hangs loose and soft and liquid, and I can't take my eyes off it. Do you see it? My flower whispers. Do you see it? I can see it, I say. And I try to look over him and past him. And he is laughing and holding both his saintly children in his arms. And the three of them are dancing to the most perfect version of Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty there has ever been, which is now, without judgment, which seems miraculous now, when received by an ear that is no longer an ear, when worded by a word that is no longer a word, and the music is the eraser of words. Holy music. And the word is no longer an idea, and values are no longer values. And what is here, right now, is and has no words. And we are no longer formulating. This ear that is no longer an ear is no longer hearing. This singer that is no singer whatsoever is no longer singing. This fat ronker is no longer boasting. This bald waiter is no longer stressing. And now We Built This City is no longer the worst song in creation. Thank you.
I reckon we should start with music then, in that case. Maybe a different kind.
Well, I mean, I was a big fan. As a young person, certainly the tribal quality of music was important to me. I was turned on by punk and post-punk, and I loved the fact that the avant-garde was on the streets and in small working class towns, and I wanted to be part of that. But as I got older and older, that section that I just read to you there from Monument Maker is part of a massive, huge fiction that I thought up. But that one section is actually true and did actually happen to me. I went to a small village in France. It was National Music Day. I turned up at this tiny street where they blocked it off. They did have a white transit van where they were blasting the light show onto. It was kind of the worst band of all time. And they were singing China Girl, and then when they played We Built This City, and there was something in me that was like, why do I decide what I'm going to give my love to? Why do I only love some things? Why are some things not deserving of love? And as I looked around and I saw these young girls dancing and this band playing so badly and this awful version of the song, I just thought, who could make this shit up? This is like living in the best novel ever, you know? So there was something about me where I lost all sense of having a taste. I believed that even taste itself was working against me, recognizing the beauty of what is. You know? It was there right in front of me and it was real. And yet I was like, well, it's a bit naff. It exists. So I had a huge moment of what I call isness. And as a writer, my books are all about isness. My books are about presenting what is in awe, in absolute awe. You know, no matter how difficult or strange or weird it is. And in a way, what meaning could you take away from that day in France with this awful cover band? What did it mean? Well, it was liberated from meaning. That's why it was so beautiful. It was just itself. And so my books are attempts to sort of liberate fiction from meaning. I actually think meaning is more shallow than meaninglessness. I think meaning is the shallow shit. Meaning is the trivial stuff. Meaning is the idea or the word that never quite matches what is. So I read that piece in a way to show the sort of epiphany that I had with my own writing, in a way that I wanted to present it as what it was. So I don't write about things. I don't write books about ideas. My books are there to be experienced. And that book, Monument Maker, it's a huge book, and people say, what is Monument Maker about? And I will say, what Monument Maker is about is the experience of reading Monument Maker.
So that moment, it's not only changing your work, it's changing an entire worldview.
Well, I mean, I don't even know if I have a worldview. I think I've stepped out from being a viewer.
Uh-huh.
And one of the weird things that we're talking about literature tonight, right? And I'm going to be honest with you. One of the most amazing things for me is when you have talks about literature, nobody talks about writing. They always talk about like some like thing that their books is about, whether it's about like the housing situation or prejudice or blah, 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 blah. But which these people are completely unqualified to talk about. So for me, the only thing I can really talk about is the amazing experience I had becoming a writer. And I wasn't prepared for it because no one fucking talked about it or no one warned me how crazy it actually is. And I mean, it's out of control in a way. And it might sound mad to say this, but the two things I really took most. So I spent decades as a writer before I was ever published. I was doing it every single day, non-stop, sometimes like 7-8 hours a day. And one of the things that blew my mind is I began to realize that I had no individual identity and there was no such thing as free will. And I feel as if you commit yourself to writing, surely you're going to realize that. Because, I write my books, there's a name on the side that says David Keenan, but I almost kind of feel like a wee bit embarrassed about that.
Because I'm like, did David Keenan really write these books? These books were written. But my experience of them was, and another thing is, you must think it's really good fun to write a book. And I probably think it is too. Like, this is memorial device of my first book. People really love that book, and it must have been really good fun to write it. Don't have a single memory of writing that book. Because I literally wasn't there. The book was writing. The book was writing. I wasn't present in a way. And what I find with the books that I've written over the years is I am not there. It's almost like it's spoken out of the air. And you're taking dictation. And I think that that's how everything happens in a way. And I think maybe it's just a problem with language. Because, when people say, like, it's raining, it is raining. What is this it that is raining? So when they say David Keenan is writing a novel, what is this David Keenan that is writing? It's the same thing as the rain. I can't quite get beyond that. And so it blew my mind. And one of my big questions to other readers is, well, what the fuck is going on with you? Why are we not talking about this shit? Because I think one of the big things about writing is, maybe it's like meditation. Because what you do is you spend decades listening to what is going on with yourself. And in a way, you kind of plot the shape of consciousness. Or you start to understand the shape of consciousness. And you understand that there's no person making this happen. Writing is writing. And then you get bold as fuck, because, well, why be afraid? Because writing happens. There's no need to be nervous about it or worried about it. You don't need to get a knot in your brain thinking, I've got to squeeze this book out. Writing happens. And then you have a mad idea, because this is when you can become insane. Because then you have a mad idea, like, this is like God work. This is like creating a world. And in a way it is. So my relationship to the alphabet is magical. I mean, you get these sort of postmodernists or these even fucking modernists who are always like, oh, language is exhausted. Language never points to the thing in itself. And of course it doesn't. It doesn't. But language can take you to the very precipice of the thing in itself. And then it can point to it like that. And then you fucking gasp. So to me, the letters of the alphabet are atomic. The words are spells. The sentences are incantations. And the books are God creation. That's just me though.
You said about it being like meditation. I remember being very young, and I think everyone else was pretty much in the same place, apart from kids that were really bored, where you'd be, they'd say draw a house, and you'd draw a house, and then you could get so lost in drawing this very basic drawing of a house that it's real. You're just drawing it, and it's like, this is a real thing. It's not even one from memory.
But I mean, it's completely real. I mean, when you read a book, this is what I talk about experience. It's completely real. I mean, you're in that a good book, you're in that book. You're dealing with those characters. Are you trying to tell me that's not magic? Why would we demean this to a lesser class of creation? It's pure magic in a way. These characters are real.
And did language land that way for you? Was your experience of language really early on? Was it something that you felt, this has the potential?
Yes. And where my language came from, where my love of language came from, is actually from illiterate people. My father couldn't read or write, and all of his brothers, they all grew up near Doyne in Belfast during the Troubles, and none of them went to, their dad didn't allow them to go to school, so they're fucking selling fucking kindling on the sticks, like fucking dealing with newspapers or shit like that. That's how they made money. Wouldn't allow them to go to school, couldn't read or write, but yet, so they used to come over to I lived in Airdrie at the time. They used to come over. It was like fucking Anne Frank with the fucking fake bookcase, an annex we called it. And so like my uncles would like live in the annex for a bit. They weren't allowed out, you know what I mean? But you could go in. So we'd go in sometimes, or you'd get locked into the annex, and they would tell you stories about what happened during the Troubles in Ireland. I was mental. It's the fucking craziest stories of all time. But they told them so well. These guys that couldn't read or write, and they had such faith in language. They're like, I'm going to tell you the best story ever about the fact that my cousin is paralysed because he gets shot in the spine. This terrible thing. And they'd be pissing themselves laughing. And they'd be, no, I'm not, tell the truth, tell what fucking happened. No, the fucking cunt was out in his front grass and he was fucking mowing the lawn like that. You know what I mean? So they'd compete to make it like funnier and more transcendent in a way. And I remember as a young man watching them and thinking, my God, this is the most magical telling. And that one day I wanted to tell their telling as well as they did. And these were people who were illiterate, but who had a profound faith in language, because these people suffered a lot. I mean, fucking Belfast in the it was a fucking civil war. It was fucking crazy. Things that happened to my family were absolutely mental. But yet they laughed about it. And not only that, they transmuted suffering by turning it into a story. And that was fucking amazing. They were fucking, to me, they were magicians. And even when my dad died, which about 11 years ago now, all his brothers turned up. And my mum, who was a Protestant, and my dad's a Catholic, so it was a very different cultural mix. And she was getting angry because everyone was laughing. She was like, why is everybody laughing at your dad's funeral? And I was like, because that's their fucking role. They turn up and they laugh and they say, what the fuck? And they redeem suffering by telling a mad story. So I began to realize that partly what I came to do is to redeem suffering by telling a mad story.
Well, the idea that words are magic, or the fact that words are magic, and the experience of that definitely has been seen to be true with Monument Maker. So, I was looking the other day and someone was posting a picture of themselves wearing a Monument Maker tour t-shirt. And so a few years ago, you had this idea, you write the book Monument Maker, it comes out, it gets published, it's a thing, it's a cult novel, or, it's there. But now, actually, I don't know how many people there is in the Monument Maker community, but it's almost like the biggest political party. It's this enormous force of people out there.
Well, I hate it being political, I'll be honest.
Well, it's not political in that way, but it has power. And it has power of people. People love Monument Maker and Monument Maker community. So what's it like to write a novel and then to sort of see 60,000 people all saying, I love this band?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like this is a memorial device and stuff, and in a way, like, yeah. I'm in love with those characters. I fucking love those characters so much. They mean so much to me. And in a way, like, as a writer, I don't believe that you can be a puppet master, that you can decide what's going to be in your book. The books write themselves in a way. And so when you fall in love with a character, say there's a character in the Memorial Device called Mary Hannah, who, I mean, she's my girlfriend in eternity. I love her so much. I never got to date her, I never will. And I always have glimpses of her. So in the Memorial Device, she's very much in the background. And when I was writing other books in the back of my mind, I wrote another book set in Airdrie called Industry of Magic and Light. But my other books do touch on it too. And there was one time where, I dream about Mary Hannah, she's so cool and unapproachable. And there was one time when I was writing Monument Maker, and the character in Monument Maker turns up in Airdrie where Memorial Device is set, and because he's getting involved, this person's making sculptures. And Mary Hannah in Memorial Device makes these weird sculptures. She takes a bag of cement over her shoulder and she makes these secret sculptures in fields. Secret art is so pure. And when I was writing Monument Maker, I was like, wow, this guy's going to see a sculptor. And it never occurred to me that it might be fucking Mary Hannah. So he opens, I'm not kidding, this is how creation feels. He opens the door of the garage, he walks in, and fucking Mary Hannah's making a sculpture. And honestly, I started crying. I was like, fuck, it's Mary. I could never have invited her. I could never have written her deliberately. And there she is. And you know what? She was younger than I'd ever known her. And it was so moving to see her so young at the beginning of her career and such a pure artist that I wept. And she was such a pure artist that 5,000 words later, she fucked off and never came back into the book. And that proves to me she was alive. It was Mary Hannah.
Yeah.
Of course she wasn't going to fucking put up with my bullshit. She's too busy making art. She disappeared after 5,000 words. That was mind-blowing. That says to me, this is alive. We're talking about things that are alive, you know?
Well, that's what I was thinking with Memorial Device. People love Memorial Device. It's love.
Yeah.
And then that's what you're describing with Mary. It's love. Unrequited, but love.
Well, I love that in a way, like, people don't really engage. I would rather, that old adage about, writing about music is like dancing about architecture. what a bullshit saying. The most beautiful response ever is to dance about anything. And see if somebody was to dance about one of my books. Best review ever. Dancing about it. So in a way, my books are about that dance, about that music. So in a way, when people respond to it, I mean, there's been a stage play, there's a Twitter account, there's all this stuff, and in a way, like I don't feel any ownership over that. Everyone has their own memorial device. Everyone has their own artistic epiphany in a way. And I like the fact that people engage in my books on the whole, not critically, but they restage it. They fucking restage it. That's amazing. They want to relive that energy. It's about the experience. In other words, my books are the thing in themselves. They're not a commentary on something else.
Well, and that's real. So you can go and watch Memorial Device. You can go and watch the play, and it's like you're watching Memorial Device. But on the first night, you know, when you launched that book, I remember the launch for that book, and you actually had people become versions of Memorial Device. You remember, like Richard and and Andrew DJing and stuff.
One of the big things is the idea of the quest, and that's just when I realised that a play version of the Memorial Device was kind of so perfectly in keeping, because the book is about the quest. It's not about the band in itself. It's not simply about the gig. It's about going there, meeting some friends on the way, ending up in a bar, having this mad interaction, meeting these crazy people, going to the bar, then not being able to get back home, then falling asleep on the bench in George Square, then getting a bus at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
It's about the quest. So going to see something alive and real and reporting back and the adventure along the way. And I had that. So I went to see the last Memorial Device play, fucking 7 times. And one of them I went to Aberdeen. You know, I've been in Aberdeen in fucking 20 years. I just went to see that. And it reminded me of going to see like the fucking Pastels and Vaselines are playing in Aberdeen. Like 1987, you would go there on a pilgrimage. And so I went there just to see that play. And it felt so exciting and amazing. I think that's a big thing about the quest, the idea of the quest. You know?
Well, I love the kind of the celebration of outsiders as well. You know, it's not easy being Iggy Pop in Airdrie. You know, and the stories of, it being very difficult sometimes trying to find your way, but then you find your way and you're like, this is who I am. But
well, my whole thing is it's harder being Iggy Pop in Airdrie than it is being Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop kind of got off light because he was in the Detroit rock and roll scene. That was fine. Try doing that in Airdrie. It's fucking tough. And so that book was written about a generation just a little bit older than me. So I would go down there in the city centre and I would witness all this stuff, and I'd be like, wow, I'd imagine how sophisticated these people's lives were. You know, they're like reading avant-garde poetry, they know everything about painting, they're listening to free jazz, you know, they're dressed so cool. To me, it was it was a challenge. It made me think there's so much more up ahead, so much more magic up ahead, you know? And also, one of the big questions is, can we ever appreciate that at the time? I always think of that Prince song, which is so Memorial Devices. Love just isn't love until it's past. Sometimes it snows in April. And does it take passing to make something profound? Can we live in the moment and say this was magic? The big thing about this is Memorial Device is all the characters in the book are kind of saying, wow, we just thought we lived in some shitty ass town in the arsehole of nowhere. But we're now realising, looking back, we believed so strong and so hard that we brought it even harder than these bullshit bands that wrote about in the enemy. That's a true story of post-punk. Anyway.
When you sit down to write something new, how much do you know? How much do you know at the point when you start?
Nothing. I don't believe in knowing anything. My books have no ideas in them whatsoever. No ideas. I don't intend to communicate any ideas. I don't wish to make a point. My whole thing is, see if you've got a point to make, fucking make it in a couple of sentences and give us all a break. Do you know what I mean? I remember there was a guy reviewed my book for the good times, and at the end he was kind of like, oh, it failed to engage with the fact that violence is bad. And I was like, mate, do you think I'd spent 2 years making the trivial point that violence is bad? Do you think I'm as simple-minded as that? I'm here to make art, bitch. You know what I mean? I mean, meaning to me is trivial. Making a point is trivial. Making something you can live in forever. I'm a big fan of William Blake. The reason I love William Blake is I believe that he's as alive now as he ever was, and he fucking is. Which is why people love William Blake much more even now than he was alive when no one cared. And the thing about William Blake is that his art is unfathomable. There is no bottom to get to. In other words, it exists almost like an organism or an entity. It cannot be solved. And so many books are kind of like, how many books will you read twice? You'll be like, all right, got that book. So what happened is he did that. She was there. What happened is that happened to her. And then it was that. And it's solved. Who wants an art that's solved? Just like, who wants a life that is solved? I mean, imagine if life had a point. How bullshit would that be? You'd have people, I've solved it, mate. I figured that out, mate. It's that. Do you know what I mean? It's all over. Yeah, no, I've sorted it. Imagine you could get to the bottom of it. Or imagine the other way. You could rejoice in the endless winging. The endless winging. Isn't that more beautiful? So my books are more about the endless winging than making some trivial point about blah, blah, blah.
At the end, well, two things. How do you know when you've finished a book? And secondly, how do you feel? How has that changed you? Like, if you do something like Monument Maker, it's such an epic piece of work. And like you say, it's not about anything, but it's about everything at the same time. It's definitely saying yes. It's not a book that's turning down ideas and concepts. It's not a book that's about ideas, as you say. But how does that change you as a person?
Well, I mean, it changed me profoundly. I guess one of the big things I'm talking about tonight is that I was unprepared for how transformative it is to work on writing a book every day of your life, because you start to realise that there is no you writing. Again, getting back to that thing, I did not write that book. There was no, I wasn't present writing it. It appeared. There was this book. And so one of the great things is, I mean, I believe that I have a religious sensibility, but to me the religious sensibility is about two things: faith and awe. And faith is very different from belief. I think people think when people say they have faith, they think, well, they just really believe in one idea, which is the opposite of faith. I have faith beyond any ideas. I believe that this is right, and any ideas are almost getting beyond what it is. And how did I come to that? Through making art. Through making art every day, I began to realize that something is speaking. And effort is a weird thing, because I think a lot of people who are trying to be creators or are nervous about creating art believe that they need to make an effort. That a quality of squeezing their brain is hard. If you can squeeze your brain harder than someone else, you can create something. But I found the opposite. You sit down and you stop thinking, but you listen. That's the biggest thing. You listen, and you allow what is speaking to speak, and then you step back in awe and you say, wow, that is not me, that is this. That is thising. And I am a spectator of it. And I would like to think that my books point to the possibility of that experience.
And is that how a new book would begin? You'd hear it, you'd know that it's coming.
I mean, honestly, my books are so linear. They start from the first sentence and they end on the last one. It's as simple as that. I get that first sentence, and I feel as if the entire book decodes or breaks down that first sentence. But I never stop. I don't jump in and out. It's just my style. I'm not saying there's different styles. I start from that first sentence and I end on the last one. And there's a weird, uncanny thing. For instance, I'm working on this book at the moment, Boyhood. And in the back of my mind, I said to myself, I don't even know why 190,000 words. Big book, 190,000. Where the fuck does that come from? And guess what? I'm about to finish it and it's going to be almost exactly 190,000 words. And that's mad. I mean, it might not end up as that when I edit it and finish it, but that process is there. And I've been writing that book for 2 years, and I can honestly say I've not had allowed myself to have a single thought about that book. Because I don't want to get in the way. I want to allow what's speaking to speak. That's just what I mean about art. I mean, come on. Art blows your fucking mind. This is mental. Why is no one saying this? And it's not us. Art is speaking. Literature is speaking. Words are speaking. It's mad.
We should end with some more magic. We should end with Xstabeth, do you think?
So I'll read this final section from my book, Xstabeth, which is a book of mine that I love very much. So there's a narrative, but there's also a sort of commentary that runs through the book, on the book itself, and this is the final commentary. It's called Grace in Xstabeth by Analea Andropov. Let us first locate grace in its most common everyday occurrence, which would be an extraordinarily beautiful young girl, walking as if on water. Let us now lend her two sisters, whom we will title Isrobing and Islans. There you have the classical graces, as it were born again. We can then see that grace is something that is bestowed, and that it self-bestows. Grace is revealed as the perpetual engine of myth and science. Grace is what Newton and Einstein failed to postulate. Indeed, grace seems as impossible as the flight of a bumblebee, which it must be admitted isn't necessarily graceful. Grace also implies a certain thank you. Who hasn't thanked the stars and God above at the sight of a beautiful young girl, her hair trailing in the wind, her dainty steps one after the other in the summertime? To appreciate the gait of a slender young girl at that time of year is to be gracious. Grace can also be experienced in the cut of a fine suit or some nice swimming trunks. Perhaps it would be more correct to say that grace both bestows and diminishes. Grace removes what is timely. It gifts us with its absence, which becomes another form of grace. This is the grace of aging, which is tied in with another word that passes for an exclamation of perfectly poised beauty. And that word is mercy. We demand mercy of the universe when it looks to overwhelm us with grace. We long to stop the young girls on the street with their long flowing dresses and perfectly proportioned pins and say, no, please. It is too much, my dear. Although the mean of grace is fluctuating, its power, just like gravity, is constant. But to have grace is also to know one's limits. Young girls and old men maintain grace through caring and conversation rather than carousing and complicating. No matter how much the grace of the young girl may unsettle, that is when the cry of mercy reaches the lips. And the conversation is subtly steered towards matters of the weather and the topic of yesterday. Yesterday is a topic that requires grace. In company, when it is spoken, you can be sure that grace has entered the scene. But grace can also make itself known as a form of disinterestedness. Grace relaxes its grip, even as it anoints the calves of young girls in conspiracy with gravity and biology. It tightens as a bodice, even as it loosens like an old, well-loved couch that has had its day and is grateful. Because grace is something to be grateful for. Old men are particularly thankful for it.
You can witness this on the beaches of seaside towns where grace itself has brought them. Sometimes initially against their will, it must be said. Despite time's intimate relationship with grace, grace comes up behind time and provides both salt and consolation. Here we should recall the story of the man who is hidden from civilization from decades. On his emergence, his first request was for salt. Salt was what he had missed the most. Grace is difficult, if not pointless, in seclusion. But even there it operates. And it is necessary to have the good grace to accept our situation. But on the whole, grace is something that requires observation. Hence, this book is a requirement of grace. Hence, the previous sentence requires a semicolon. One runs from the other in a way that is delightful. I say good grace because grace is something that we must come to terms with in the long run. I say long run because, as I have intimated, grace is something that comes with age. I say comes with age because grace is something that makes itself known when we are older. I say also that grace is present in the young as they tumble and fall and get back up again. All with grace. Yet I insist that grace is something that makes itself known in age. Grace, as I have hinted, is something that is gifted. How else would we let go the lovely bodies of our youth? The lovely, flawless bodies of our youth with such grace as to surely intimate the working of a heavenly hand? If not for the gift of grace itself. Because as much as it might upset or confuse the reader, grace also has a hand in the deadening of things. It is said that people go to their deaths with grace, as if they have taken the hands of Xstabeth and Islans and retreated across the soft, dewy grass with silent footsteps. Then forgetting too becomes a graceful act. Grace descends and the pain becomes lighter. The memory softer. Grace works to soothe feelings and to quell rages. Grace allows us to separate ourselves from everything we believed we once were. The old man on the bench at the seaside resort. He has taken the passing of the beautiful bodies of his youth with grace. The way you accept a summer shower. He sits there in the shower and he feels the rain fall. From his vantage point above the beach, he can see the rain come in and he can see will it will end. He watches a beautiful young girl untie her loose dress and reveal a white one-piece swimming costume. At one point, the sight of a beautiful girl in a swimming costume would have sent uncontrollable feelings of love and longing through his body. Now grace has intervened. Not for me, he thinks. The complications of other bodies. The overstuffed handbags held gracefully halfway up the arm. The words of the floppy summer hat and oversized sunglasses are now muted. They appear as distant birds. He calls her by her name. Grace. He recalls her sisters, Xstabeth and Islans. He takes out a pen and a piece of paper. There it is. Thank you very much.
Yes to grace. So, thank you to Beak, to Track, to Verdant for the beers tonight, and to have put this whole thing together with Picador and Faber and White Rabbit. And thank you to all of you for coming to Pages tonight at Tate Modern. And thank you, David Keenan.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
I think all of David's books are out there, and of course, there are more Lego bricks. So enjoy yourselves. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.